Alright, hello everyone. In this video I'll give you my random thoughts from my reread of Memories of Ice, Book 3 of the Malazan Book of the Fallen. And this is it, isn't it? This is generally considered to be the best book in the Malazan world, by many considered to be the best fantasy novel ever. But on our first read, once again, expectations. On a first read, the book didn't live up to my expectations. So on this reread, before this reread, I was convinced that I was going to fall in line and understand its utter greatness. And after reading it, then a second time, I still kind of didn't. Still consider it to be a middle tier book by Malazan standards. By your general fantasy standards, this is about as good as it gets. Had this been a standalone, had this been the only book in the Malazan world, I might very well consider it to be one of the best fantasy books ever. And for the life of me, I can't figure out why this doesn't resonate with me to the same extent as it does for others. Is it a bit too heavy on the military stuff? Maybe, or is it a bit much of dare I say it, or will you go nuts? I think it's a bit too much of Whiskey Jack, to be honest. I've never latched on to him. Never found him that interesting. Too much of the military stuff, yeah, like the boss fight between Trots and that youngster he finds in the duel. We have Gruntle, also someone who I don't latch onto to the same extent as many others, though. Gruntle at Capustan, we see Gruntle rising up. He's back on the street. He did his time, he took his chances, he went the distance, and now he's back on his feet. Just a man and his will to survive. But yeah, Capustan, a bit too much. Buildings with the walls buckling under the pressure of dead, bloated bodies. And it doesn't help that I'm generally not very interested in fight scenes. So when I watch a movie, I'll tend to either fast forward or zoom out during the big fight scenes, or car chases, or even worse. Hate those. Just want to skip to the end, and I want to know who won, who didn't. So yeah, that's on me, a personal preference. But still, though, there are battles in this series that grips me by the throat and won't let go. Such as the second battle of Yagathan, for example, or the Siege of Pale, which are just marvelously written. But there are, of course, so many good things going on here as well. I don't want to leave you with the impression that I don't like the book. Lady Envy and the Seguli are just brilliant. I'm not as invested in the Tuck and Tool bromance as many others seem to be, though. Speaking of Tuck, many readers think, and rightfully so, that Tuck makes a somewhat irrational decision in leaving Tool and Envy to go off trying to infiltrate the Penyon Domain by his own. But I love how he finally just cracks and is like, oh my god, my present company is insane and will get me killed. I need to get out of here. And hey, let's try that army of cannibalistic religious fanatics. At least things can't get any worse. And yeah, things get worse. Of course, it gets worse for him. Poor guy. We need to talk. I need to mention the Maib, of course, as a father of three. I can relate to the feeling of unconditionally and wholeheartedly loving the thing that is sometimes also slowly wearing you down. I can only imagine that this is even more relatable to mothers. And even though I have thankfully never had any major conflicts with my own parents, I certainly can see how the lack of communication could lead to the broken relationship we see between Silver Fox and the Maib. Now, as a rereader, it is interesting to see the Crippled God finally entering the story as a major player, and now is being set up as a big bad. Though at this point, it isn't really clear how great of an impact he will have, because we have seen many potential threads fading in and out of the story. It's easy to say that, of course, it's a big bad because the 10th book is called The Crippled God, but When this book was written, no, I'm assuming no one but Erickson knew the title of that final book. What else? Bocalain and Brooch show up. Quite randomly and with no great impact on the story. But this time around though, I had read half of the Bocalain and Corbel Brooch novellas before Memories of Ice. And that really made me enjoy their scenes, because now I knew who they were. And oh, Rhys, poor Rhys. Something that became clear on a reread, and I think that I've heard some content creators talk about not really understanding. That's when Keller leaves Brood's camp to go off and try to kill Silver Fox. Now, Brood seems quite distracted, and he just accepts Keller's reasoning as it stands. Caladan Brood is no longer the sharp-minded, decisive warlord we have come to know during this book. But when meeting the crippled god, Keller accepted a place in the House of Chains in return for an opportunity to kill Silver Fox, which of course also makes more sense on a reread when we know that Nightshell is a part of Silver Fox. Anyway, Brood letting Keller leave without questions surely has to be a divine intervention from the crippled god as part of his deal with Keller, clouding Brood's mind so that he did not see what Keller was really up to. That's my thought on the matter, at least. So Keller goes off, and yeah, even though Whiskey Jack was never a favorite character, his death is brilliantly depicted. So nice of a setup, so nice, so great of an execution. The writing there, how Erickson uses, on the page, how he uses spaces and line breaks to really hammer it home. Amazing stuff. Itkovian, of course, a huge central part of this book. The scene where he shows up and all the Imas turns to face him, it gives me chills. I can hear the swoosh sound and the silence afterwards. I can feel the emotional weight of this moment, but rationally, I still don't get what exactly is going on here and why it is so important. So, what he takes on their memories and their pain and their suffering. Maybe it's my complete lack of religious beliefs and probably lack of understanding of religious thinking. I mean, I get Christ-like implications here. The myth of a godlike person taking on the sins of the world has never really made sense to me. And in the same manner, I do not get the implications here either. Are the memories lost then to the Imas? But I don't get the sense that they no longer remember their past. Are there emotional connections? Are the emotional connections to these memories broken? I don't know. Is that something you would want? I don't know. Maybe are they no longer suffering now? But the source of their suffering is connected to their immortality, right? And their connection to the ritual of Telan, and that's not broken. That's still on, right? I don't know. So emotionally, I absolutely get the weight of this moment, but like rationally, I have a hard time. I'm struggling with it. And I also had a hard time with this dream world just magically solving a lot of problems. I get that it's a place for the Maib, and that's fine, but Tool suddenly becoming a real flesh and blood Imas again? I'm not sure I'm on board. Back to some really, really positive things, though. This book contains one of my favorite scenes in the entire series. I have many favorite scenes, but this is one of them. And it's not one of the big moments. It's one of those just, let's check in on the soldiers kind of scene that is so frequent in this series. But this is probably my personal favorite of them. I think it's from Picker's POV, where she's, at dusk, sitting, just observing the squad. Nothing much happens. Ending with Bland coming up to her and saying it's time for bed. And in those instances, the big battles and the super epicness of the series just fades, into the background, and you can throw everything you've got into a huge fantasy battle, right? A dragon is not enough, so let's add an undead anti-magic dragon. Let's add a tornado made of bones. Let's add dinosaurs with swords for arms. Let's add a giant fortress that hung in the sky in much the same way that bricks don't. The true strength of Eriksson's writing is when he manages to put such weight in these tiny, modest, almost forgettable moments, and he does that all of the time. And I think that's why I enjoy reading it so much. And Picker and Blend are such great characters. They're such a great couple. I wish we got to see them in more books than just. I think they're only in 2 books, right? Memories of Ice and Toll the Hounds later on. Great writer as he is, I don't think Eriksson always does a good job when it comes to romantic relationships, which isn't a big problem because romantic relationships are rarely at the center of anything really important in this book or in this series. But I don't really care for Whiskey Jack and Quarla. I don't very much care for Crocus and Apsalar. But Picker and Blend, though, yeah, I can feel that. They're a great couple, great characters. But the main takeaway has to be this for me. Has to be this the story of the Pannion Seer, and just as with Felicin, the root of the horrible acts that he's responsible for cannot necessarily be blamed on him. A child condemned to eternal suffering, to then, after thousands of years of said suffering, being released and raised by an undead dinosaur. Yeah, I can't believe I just said that. Imagine someone randomly clicking on this video out of context and hearing that. Anyway, yeah, in that situation, I think most of us would start a fanatical, bloodthirsty, cannibalistic cult. And I think that's enough for now. Great book, in my opinion, but not the best in the series. Time to stop now before things get any weirder. And besides, I got a mule to kill. See you all later.